you're going to lose the sale more often than not if you don't make contact with the client and establish a relationship right away. So when you're out in the job, if you're single owner operator, this is really tough because you don't want to be pushing the wand or the pressure washing hose or whatever, and then have the phone ring and you pick it up and Mrs. Jones looking out the window at you and like, oh, he's answering the phone on my time. Like, there's a sensitivity there. I get that. But if you can't answer your phone at all times, you have got to figure out a way to get it done. You're throwing money away. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the ServiceMonster podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kowalski, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how you answer your damn phone. Whether you do it, whether your wife does it, whether your daughter does it, whether you hire someone to work in the office at home or you hire it out, have it done through a third party. That's a tricky situation to get into, but you have to answer your phone.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about that and a handful of experiences that we've been through with ServiceMonster. We had our own call center at one point, but we'll deep dive into that later. Before we do that, let's get to some housekeeping. Adam, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so one thing we'll be mentioning every week, kind of leading up to this, is August 15th. Everyone needs to mark your calendars.
August 15th.
And
5 o'clock p.m.
Yep, and that's Pacific time, correct?
That's correct. Yep. Pacific time.
So 5 p.m. Pacific time. So we're going to do a large webinar
right?
For the new ServiceMonster app.
ServiceMonster Simplified. That's the messaging that you're going to see. The webinar is not a value webinar. We're not going to be there talking about how you run your business. We're going to be there talking about ServiceMonster. Yep. ServiceMonster platform, ServiceMonster desktop, the new core features set. That's the $49 subscription. I'm going to talk about raising our prices. We're going to be releasing a trial, which allows you to just jump in and use it for 15 days. We're doing away with the demo, right? Mobile environment that we're not calling Mobile Pro anymore. This will just be ServiceMonster because the Technician app and Mobile 3 will be going away. The schedule, which is in beta now. So the new schedule rebuild, which is absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah.
ServiceMonster 5 like crushes, right? ServiceMonster 6 has some things that are better and some things that people who use 5 like better in 5 than 6. This is a perfect first merge of the brilliance and simplicity of 5 and the functionality of 6, but giving you the data and the views. And I mean, it's just so good. Aaron spent 6 months on it.
Oh yeah.
And I'm super excited. So, all those things. So we got price changes, we got core coming out, we've got the app, scheduling changes and trial. All of those are kind of over the next 60 days will be coming out off soft releases in beta. And, when we do that webinar, that'll kind of be the grand unveiling of the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle, making that available for anyone who wants to jump in, or who wants to give ServiceMonster an actual ride and see what we've got going on the mobile front now post this release. Yep. So again, August 15th, 5 o'clock, we're going to be giving away some prizes. We're going to be talking about workflows. And the whole message is ServiceMonster Simplified. Core is ridiculously simple. Like if all you need is your basic core CRM, scheduling, order management, that's the product. And that'll have everything that mobile has. The app and core kind of go really well together. And then as you need it and as you expand into Pro and Enterprise, you can get more of those deeper features that some people seem to be lost in because we throw too much at them at first. So again, this whole message about simplification, we're going to be really diving into that. From a business owner point of view, you guys are going to be interested to know that if you've been paying attention, you know that out of a $5 ad spend, $4 goes to value content. So they're not ads. 1 out of $5 that we spend goes towards ads. Sorry, over the next 60 days or so, we'll be pushing the podcast and we'll be pushing maybe some Entree Joe stuff now and again, but for the most part, we're flipping the script on that. We're going to be doing $4 or $5 and $0 on value promotion. It's interesting too, because the team is working out kind of a storyboard over telling this simplification story. And we're going to use a handful of different advertising mediums, whether it's going to be video or selfie videos or straight up, video ad, in imagery, comics. We're going to tell this story with multiple ads. And it's a nice constraint because it helps the creative team focus on kind of one thing and one message. And then out from that comes a whole bunch of content that we can then promote and use as advertising. So maybe spend a little longer. I won't spend as much time in the next coming weeks, but we will be reminding you again, August 15th, 5:00, the full release of ServiceMonster Simplified and a whole slew of new features and functions for you guys to build your business with. So we're all very excited.
Yeah, and if all of that wasn't enough to kind of get you guys enthused about that, you'll see both of our smiling faces on there. So I know you guys like to chat with us.
Yeah, I'll be hosting that one personally, and Adam will be co-hosting with me. Yeah. So go on there and show up and let's chat, and I'm going to go through that whole presentation, but we're being open to conversation and questions just like always. So yeah.
And this actually leads perfectly into the next little bit, because we have a lot of new things coming out. Well, we need to make sure that the QA test environment there is handled, because all these new features.
We get to rebuild QA how we see fit at this point. I'm gonna pull Ethan on that to help us too, because some of the automated testing stuff that he had worked on was perfectly fine and viable and worked for 6, but nobody maintained it, so it wasn't being used. And then the automated REST testing. So we have two threads of automation that aren't really being utilized right now. Yep. So we're going to make sure that those get put into place. And then one of the guys, just a kick-ass button smasher. He used to work for Microsoft in QA and can break anything and knows how to look at things from the user's point of view. So, but yeah, one starts on Monday, and our process is all new employees spend 2 weeks, spend a week or 2 weeks, depending on where they're destined, but at least a week in the support department. Just listen to support calls and watching the support people work.
I'll actually be involved a little bit on that too.
Yep,
so
absolutely. Well, you're the trainer. You should be. It's like, duh.
Yeah.
And then personnel issues while we're on the subject. Javi, you guys have seen him on the show and the podcast. He is off to greener pastures. He was an entrepreneur coming in. I said, dude, let's do 2 years and see where you're at. You can figure out where you're going from there. I think he got stuck, to be honest. He wasn't quite here 2 years, but I saw him be like comfortable. But now his girlfriend's graduating and dragging his ass to Eastern Washington for an internship that she has. So it's a good spot for him. It's a good spot for us. Skylar, who has been the sales manager assistant, I cannot wait to see what that guy does. So Skylar's been around for a while. We pulled him out of super agents. He's been really helping out in the sales and onboarding team. He fits in really well, and I'm excited to see him on the sales front. We just put him in the chair yesterday, and he's already got like 3 sales racked under. So.
Yeah, and he's been slowly ramping up to that too. So I mean,
yep.
he's great. I've loved Skylar since pretty much the day I met him. Like, amazing personality,
yeah.
hard worker. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the cleaning the shop there. We can probably move right into SMUG. The first post was kind of relating to things we've already talked about a little bit, but there's some clarification here, and I think that it's good to get this post out there, because Mary Lynn, she posts a lot in SMUG, but she wanted to clarify something with you about the additional work or rework or things like that, and how that's filtered through your KPIs, and as far as like what the best kind of practice is there.
Right.
And you kind of explained that, I guess in this case, it was more Brenda was the one who kind of went through and
Brenda's a rock star on SMUG.
Yeah.
Love her.
And so this is just for everyone who maybe has this process, is if you're creating zeroed out invoices for your rework, it will affect your dashboard, like your KPIs there.
Yeah.
There are a couple of reports that will filter that out, because they're not they're looking at slightly different things. And Brenda listed those as far as the what was the one? The top customers report, I think, was one. There's another kind of more very specific report. But I guess the main point to take here is what you explained, I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
You don't need to make a whole separate invoice for your rework.
You have multiple jobs in each order.
Yep.
And the perfect scenario that fits with the design of the product, at least as it stands right now, I mean, go to SMUG and tell us how it should work differently. And there might be a case for removing $0 invoices from the calculation, but it goes against my nature because that's a kind of a filter we just normally don't do because then it's hard to explain. So when you want to do rework, you just simply take the invoice and you schedule a new job against it. You make new notes, it's new time, you can assign a new crew, and there are reports that will show you that you had a rework and the job type, here's the technicians that were kind of the ones working on it who may have caused the issue that generated the rework. So those two things are really important. Number one, keeping your average invoices and not creating a whole mess of new work for you and new stuff in your database. But also like knowing what the technician efficiency is and who was responsible for things that needed rework. If you use the system correctly, it'll dial in correctly. So again, it would be, oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones, let me look up that invoice. Oh, okay, I see it here. It looks like we were out such and such a date. Yeah, okay, good. You know what? I'll have my guy come out 2 days. Does that work for you? And then schedule that invoice on the schedule. Don't create a new one. And then the type, the work type, was it status? Not status.
Nope.
Job type.
Job type.
The job type on the job then would be rework. And there's a couple different types on there from the system. So
you can actually you can fully customize that field. You can call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
But yeah. The main thought there too, and again, like Joe said, if you guys think that this is totally whack and, there's a whole nother thought there and there's enough voices, then, take a look at it. But it's...
Make me.
Yeah. But when you have rework, the idea is that you want to see what the invoice was and then why would that have been a problem during the workflow.
Right.
Like, why did this problem come up if he's doing, the basement, the stairs, and this?
Right.
Oh, okay, maybe he dragged the equipment along after the fact and it made some sense,
Sure.
Whatever that is.
Now, if you upsell, let's do a little caveat though, right? If you upsell while you're in the home and you're going to need to collect payment, that's the time you bring out the new invoice or the new order. Right? You don't amend the old order. Don't do that.
It's no longer just a rework. Yeah. It's a whole separate entity.
And you don't need a job against an order. So, and that could be an interesting scenario too, where you go out and they're like, oh, well, can you do this while you're here? Sure. Taking your mobile device, whip up a new order against that client, have them pay it. Done. No big deal. You can go back and go, oh my gosh, there's no job against this. That's okay. It doesn't have to be for the system. That's for you. Right. So yeah, you could put a job against it and then it would double up. You'd have what would look like a conflict, one for the rework and then one for the job that was tied to the order that you charged them. But again, it's not a big deal. It's a bigger deal to make those extra orders when they're unnecessary. Also, just one quick kind of training tidbit. If you guys are not aware and you're using 6, because all of you guys are using 6, right? Yeah. If you're using 6 on the quick add, there is an order lookup function, and I found during the training process that some of the older users aren't aware that it's there. Yeah. You don't have to use the quick add to make a new order. Nope. You can use the quick add to grab an existing order. Of course, you should grab your customer first, right? You actually don't have to. If you don't have to. If you know the order number, you don't have to. It makes it easier, though, doesn't it? It really depends on what info you're coming in with. Sure. That's why it's a quick add, though. You can start from any flipping vector, and then it just flows through. So yeah, you can grab an account and then find an order that's existing, or you could just go to that order section in the quick add, find the order, and it'll backfill the account for you. Yep. Yeah. Cool. So hope that was helpful. The next one I thought was interesting because this is something that we've started to talk about in-house. You can make me do this one. I am going to make you do this because it's fun. Like I'm sure you'll put me on the spot later and it'll be fine. Bruno asked about a filter by order type in the drip campaign. Yeah. And it brought up, I think, a really nice dialogue between you and him, kind of understanding what he was trying to do. I don't think I communicated the message I was trying to communicate. because it's a very hard message to communicate.
Okay.
Which is why I'm glad you brought it up here, right, for everybody. Let's see if I can do this without being too geeky. When you're marketing to a client. That's pretty much the end of it. Now, when you then start talking about filters that are properties of the client are pretty easy. Name, primary site, phone numbers, addresses, some activity like last and next of stuff.
Right.
But when you start talking about jobs and orders, opportunities, they're what we call a one-to-many relationship. So for each account, you can have many orders. And for each order, you can have many jobs. This is a very layered and web type data structure. It keeps it flexible and gives you guys the tools you need to do when you're on the job and in your business and to put together the right processes and SOPs. But when you say, I want to create a marketing campaign that targets an order type, my brain fries. Because what you just told me is I want to market to a client based off an order type that could conceivably be in any state in any list of any of those clients. In this example, you wanted to target somebody voided? Was it void today?
Yeah, and see, that's actually the really interesting part to me, because I've had this come up.
Yeah.
Where his main point, and I don't know if we want to throw out names necessarily of competition, is there are other software that have this issue where they're sending out a drip to follow up on estimates or whatever.
Right.
And there's no trigger that when they've said essentially, I don't want to move forward.
Right.
And so that's what he's trying to use out of this.
Oh,
so
I don't want to move forward.
So it's basically remove this from the drip campaign without him having to manually do it. Because what he's done is what I have trained against, which is basically make a custom field with a date that says they refuse it on this date. But that's a manual process in an automated, marketing. So I think that's really.
So he just wants to void the order and then have it go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? Because that's a specific use case.
Yep.
In that case, you would need some sort of a filter that was a sum of the fields to make it a one-to-one against the account. And this field could be something like number of open estimates, right? So if your number of open estimates is 1 or greater, and then that way when the estimate goes to voided, then they're good. But I'm trying to communicate to the team. I know you get it, but to the people out in the podcast realm, when you think about targeting your clients, you got to think in terms of one-on-one for those filters. When you start looking at jobs and orders, because there's many of them, you've got to narrow that down. You can do things like, well, give me the last order of X type, or the first order of X type, or the current order of X type. Well, I guess current would be, the date that was last recent in the list, right? So, you can do things like that, or, how many in open estimates they have, count of open estimates, a count of open work orders, right? You can do stuff like that. But even then that starts to get tricky, because if you don't manage it quite right, then things go south, and maybe you're not sure why, because it's not necessarily as apparent. So, and I think it's a valid use case. I think we need to take a look at more use cases and see if we can obfuscate the fields that would make the most sense, right? And this estimate count was just off the top of my head. I hadn't thought about it before. So as these conversations happen, right, that gets engineering brains working and coming up with solutions, just like that texting solution that we had this morning, right, with Brian. Mm-hmm. I think it's great. So, moving forward with data and feedback. So if you guys want to, in SMUG, start a discussion around some additional filtering types we can do that. But when I come back to you and go, which order, it means that there's a fundamental, let me try that again. There's a fundamental mathematical flaw in the way you've approached the question, right? So the answer would be an answer that would give me 1 or 0 orders for that account that we could then query against. So I hope that helped, Bruno. I know that we tried to chat about it a little bit, and then what I was really trying to do is don't engineer the solution. We'll do that. Give me the use case. Give me the problem you're trying to solve.
Exactly. And that's that. This whole thing went perfectly from how I envisioned it, because that's exactly it. What eventually came out was useful. Like, we could take that and be like, okay, I see what he's trying to do. That is a difficult problem.
Yep.
And so we can take that and actually try to find a solution.
Right. So I'm going to say it again because it's important. People of SMUG, don't engineer shit, right? You guys aren't engineers. So you ask a question about, hey, I want to do this. And the way you ask it says the app needs to have this function. Well, don't do that. You might be right? I'm not saying you guys aren't smart, or some of you haven't even slung code before, but there's so much data you don't have, especially in a sense of scale. So instead, what you say is, hey, yo, Joe, I need to be able, is there a way to drop these accounts out of my filter when I close the invoice to void? And I'll go, not currently, but let me think about that. And then the engineers get to work, and then we create a field just like count of total open estimates or whatever. And then we roll from there. And then you go, oh, okay. And then it can be used in other things, in other ways, and leveraged in different ways. So yeah, cool.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm just going to add a few things in here. I'm going to go to one by Don, because I get asked about this a lot. Not necessarily this exact question. But how many times have you heard this probably too? Like, what's the best tablet to use? What's the best computer to buy?
Yeah.
And at this point, there's so many options that you never really want to just narrow it down to one specific thing. It's really just kind of find out what you need it for, find some specs and whatnot. But she was asking about a laptop to use with ServiceMonster, and the point that I wanted to kind of get out there to possibly help potential users is how you responded about the resolution.
Yes.
So go ahead and answer that.
Yeah. So first I would say that ServiceMonster should, we're moving towards ServiceMonster working well on all platforms, whether that's tablets or mini laptops, so that things kind of flow and move around correctly. You can see and scroll everything. We're not there yet. And there's a handful of screens that actually just get right up, gummed up.
Yeah. The
activities management screen is one of those. If you're on a laptop with a resolution that's the height is a little, or the width is a little non-standard. I might be going over people's heads here, so let me back up for a second. You have a screen size, right? The size of your screen. And then you have the resolution. Buy a television, you don't worry about resolution because it's all 1080. So computers, though, they have different resolutions. It's the number of pixels on the screen and the density. And, those tablets even get crazier. And then the phones have ultra high resolutions, right? So you can get lost in that really quick. Generally anything over 800 pixels in height, you're going to be okay. That's kind of the standard rule that I've seen. These laptops are coming like 788. They're problematic. They can be problematic. Now, it's easy fix. Zoom is your friend.
Right.
So just, go to 110% or what? No, 90%.
Yeah, you either zoom in or out depending on what you need.
What you need. You're usually going to go smaller, though. If you're going to zoom at all, you're going to go smaller. So you're going to go like 90% or 80%. You're just going to play with that until you get it dialed in, and it just looks awesome, because it will look awesome once you get it dialed into the sweet spot. So the resolution is really not necessary, except if you're a computer user who doesn't understand anything about computers. You buy a computer and you log in and you open up and you think that's the end game. What I'm seeing in ServiceMonster moving around, okay, I can't change it. That's it. My laptop sucks, or ServiceMonster sucks on this computer. Again, Zoom is your friend. And then going in, if you're going to get new equipment, just make sure 800 pixels high at least. Now, we are continually working on making these resolutions better. So the other thing is tablets, phones, that kind of stuff. We don't officially support ServiceMonster 6 on those environments, but we're moving towards doing that. The framework was built to have touch, but when we were first released 6 didn't have an auto redirect for the phones. And I was seriously getting messaged for like, Joe, what the hell, man? I can't use it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't. People are raving about 6. Why? And then he sent me a screenshot, and this happened more than once, and they're trying to use 6 on the phone. And it's like, all I can see is the site. I was like, Yes. No, you can't use 6 on your phone. You'll never be able to use 6 on your phone. But we are targeting tablets. We'll be fixing that. And again, resolution 800 high, and you should be okay. Zoom is your friend.
So yeah, thanks as always to our SMUG users. I'll never stop kind of thanking them, even those few. But yeah, we'll just kind of move into our deep dive, which you'd already mentioned there, and that is, and I put in all caps because this is dear to me, answering your phones. Like, I see this all the time, reaching out to help, the new users coming on board, just to give them some training. And I see things like their voicemail's full. They're just not answering while they're out in the field. So literally the entire day, they don't answer the phone.
Or they'd answer your call.
And see, I always joke about that. I'm like, maybe you're just seeing the Washington number, and I get it, that's fine.
But that's not what's happening.
It's not.
No, not normally.
And I think that's it's highlighting this underlying problem. And, you can't do everything and also be available to answer every call. Like, that's right. You'd never get anything done. So I guess we'll kind of do this in a few different segments, but this is obvious, I guess. But like, why is this so important, Joe?
I mean, speed, right? You're going to lose the sale more often than not if you don't make contact with the client and establish a relationship right away. So when you're out in the job, if you're a single owner operator, this is really tough because you don't want to be pushing the wand or the, the pressure washing hose or whatever, and then have the phone ring and you pick it up and Mrs. Jones looking out the window at you and like, oh, he's answering the phone on my time. Like, there's a sensitivity there. I get that. But if you can't answer your phone at all times, you have got to figure out a way to get it done. You're throwing money away. And let's say every lead costs you $50 or $60. And legitimately, it's typically the price is you'll spend $60 to $80 to get into the home for the first time. And so if you get that lead and you don't answer the phone, they're going to call the next person on the list, or your ad is going to make them search on the Google box because you didn't answer the phone, and your ad's going to drive business to somebody else. So that's the biggest reason. And then, yes, customer support too, making sure that customers feel like they're supported, that you just didn't leave them and then I can't get a hold of you, right? Called you like 3 times, couldn't even leave a message. What the hell? Not professional. You're not going to grow that way. It's not going to happen. So you've got to figure out how to deal with that. And there's like a handful of ways that you can try to solve this problem, but it's not an easy problem to solve until you've got a couple people on your staff. That's when things take a real big turnaround. Then every call is answered. Nothing slips through the cracks, and you get every sale that you can get. That's when you can start to grow. So how do you bridge the gap? That's the big question. Because as a single owner operator, it's going to be hard to get enough cash coming in to pay for a second body. That second body, where are you going to put them? In your home? Are you smoking dope halfway throughout the day? You have no idea what they're doing when they're there. Do you know what an 8-hour a day in the office even looks like for your business? I mean, if you're a single owner operator, you don't. You just don't. You're out there and you're hustling and you're doing everything and you're wearing every hat and you're, making the jobs happen. You're collecting the payment. You don't know how the flows and the operating procedures of that office run for 8 hours to keep somebody busy. The things that, and how do you train that if you don't know it? And then how do you expect them to get it right if you can't train them?
Right.
So it's a whole conundrum there, right? The instant win most of the time is the wife, right? Hey, wifey, come help me with this. Spend a year here with me and answer the phone. A lot of times they have their own careers. They have their own aspirations. They want to help you build a business. Their eyes glaze over when you talk about it at night as it is. Like, there he goes talking about his $1 million window cleaning business again. Like, they love you, but man, right? Your life is business. There isn't. If you can get them to hook up, right? If you can get them to say, yeah, I'm in it with you, then that's amazing, because that mom and pop team can be pretty powerful. Communication is a big key there, though. You've got to communicate with your wife and your husband and just keep that lines of communication open. Otherwise, it's a easy way to ruin a marriage fast.
You also and this is coming from someone who's not married, so maybe take it with a grain of salt, but you need to make sure you have some sort of cutoff of work talk and life talk.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, if they're both in it, if they both have the entrepreneurial mindset, try to keep them from pillow talk at 2:00 in the morning about the business.
Right. Exactly.
Just try it. It's not going to happen. But if they're not in it for the entrepreneurial side of it, then yeah, you could totally wear them down when you're the entrepreneur and they're the worker bee, right? The other thing that you want to be careful of is establishing correct roles and understanding. It's like, I'm sorry, babe, but in this environment, I'm going to be your boss, or vice versa, right? Because more often than not, I see it as the pops out pushing the wand, glad handing. They got the smile and the personable on the field. And then the moms are handling the phone and the data and the accounting. Can close a job like nobody's business, super good over the phone, fast and efficient. And in that environment, more often than not, mom is boss. That's just the way it goes because she knows the data, and it actually drives her nuts when Pop's in there screwing things up.
Yep. I hear that a lot on training calls.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's option number one, right? So single owner operator followed to option number one if you have a spouse that you could bring into the team. And then you can even do it part-time, or you're not getting the phones answered on the non-part-time, right? So I would discourage that, but you could do it on a short-term basis. Like, babe, come help me for 6 months while we get some flow going, and then maybe then start paying her slowly over time and build the position up until the company just absorbs the cost. And then at some point you can bring in somebody to replace her and she can go somewhere else, or, not. And then you just bring in another technician, and that's amazing, right? So that's a good first step. Another one is, and I'm not a huge fan, even though we tried it, which is call centers. If there's nothing else, you got to do it. But man, don't expect too much of these guys. They're going to answer the phone. They're going to be better than you. Are they going to close the call or book the job better than you? No. Know that going in. Eat that. Right? Don't try to force them to be as good as what an office staff would be. You're too cheap to hire the office staff anyways. Right? And I'm in air quotes there, right? I'm cheap as a euphemism here for don't let it wreck your mindset. You're not paying for a full-time employee that you've trained to do your process. Don't expect that out of the call center that you hire to answer your calls and try to book those jobs and get rid of the salespeople and tell Adam to take a flying leap when he's calling you for training. So that's, and there's a couple decent ones out there. Answer Phones of America, Paperclip by Lupe, who was at Full Circle before they shut down. And I know of what we speak. We helped coach 4 other call centers over the last 15 years. And we ourselves had super agents. We ran that for almost 2 years, 18 months. And it was great. And people seriously were depressed when we shut it down. We needed to focus on what we needed to do. And I wasn't happy with the level quality of service because I wanted to get as close to in your office as I could get. And we got pretty close, but not where I wanted to go. So yeah, you can hire some people to answer your phone. You can get 24-hour options that way if you hunt around enough. But again, don't expect them to be rock stars. They'll answer every phone. They won't close every deal.
I think the other really nice win with the phone answering service is if you're someone who's highly seasonal, it's way easier to hire that for a 4-month period than it is to hire an employee who then what happens to him the other 8 months out of the year, right?
Yeah. So the only cost prohibitive factor there is if the call center has some sort of big setup, right, to join that.
Or
crew.
If they're contract based, obviously.
Right. So you got to go in with a plan to begin with, and then of course your next option is to hire an employee. Right. So whether it's nepotism, you bring in a daughter or cousin or something like that, just get started. I typically will say stay away from nepotism as much as possible. It just opens up a can of worms. We've talked about this a few weeks ago. Actually, it was last week.
It was last week.
Yeah. But, neighborhood kids, or retired people, sometimes they're a good source of somebody who can help you build a business. They just need something to do. So they're willing to take $13-14 an hour to answer the phones and plug stuff in. You're not going to get computer experts when you go that route, right? Some of the things that they could be doing is social media. So who are you going to hire for that? retired nanny or wannabe blogger, right? But will the wannabe blogger sell the job on the phone?
Right.
With the right training, the answer is yes, if you bring in the right person. So, but it's hard because you should have an established protocol. You should know what the office environment should look like. You should be able to keep them busy, have tons of tasks that you can train them on. So hiring that person, there's a commitment there than just, hey, I brought somebody in to answer my phones. I'm going to go out and work and you sit here, because that employee will not be there for very long. Because at first it'll be like, yeah, I got this great job where I hardly do shit all day long. And I just surf the internet all day and then pick up the phone when it rings. Or they could be productive in helping you build your business, playing on social media, putting together content, writing blogs, answering the phone, sending out thank yous, all that customer relation management stuff. So you got to be careful. You got to go in with the no.
If you're in a college town, especially some of the larger schools, they actually have like their job boards on there, and you can definitely find people who are very social media savvy. They're in a marketing major. They're doing that. And you can definitely get someone looking for, that work 25, 30 hours a week. You can have. That
would be amazing. Like bring in let's say summer help full-time right now would be a perfect time.
Exactly.
Who's a marketing major, and say, yeah, part of your job is selling because, but it's not outbound or outside sales. You're not like gold chain dude here. Pick up the phone, be nice, answer their questions, try to get the job booked. But if they're also marketing major, be like, look, dude, half of your day is marketing and setting up my social media presence and creating some rules that the next people can come in, can follow, right? So that could be very enticing and a win-win, right? Leveraging other people's passions. I talk about it all the time. This would be a perfect example to do that in, but it'll take you a while to find that right person.
Right.
So that's it. I don't think there's any other. I mean, answer your own phone. Have the missus answer the phone. Hire someone or do a call center.
I think there's one other thing that you could mention as far as having the online presence, right? If you have some sort of using our web forms with scheduling, or if you have something more advanced like Fiddlebug, or you literally web developed something that pulls in to ServiceMonster or whatever CRM you're using, you can literally build your own schedule if you know what you're doing, because we have those endpoints right in the API. So there is that option as things move kind of more online, but again, you're going to lose the voice. You're going to lose the sales kind of side of that.
Service, and I get this a lot. People come in frantic. I need a web form. I need a web form. Oh my God, I need a web form. Like, okay, you can put up a web form in an hour. Some fields, email address, and have it send it to you. No, but I want to auto. Okay, how many you get in a day? Well, I don't have one up yet. How many do you think you're going to get? 1,000? Like, you're going to get 4 emails in a month is how that's going to play out. Now, if you're really good about dropping people at your site, you might get 100 requests, 100 leads in a month. But why put the ROI, the development, or the upfront costs and the freaking out about it before you know? Right. So you could start off with an email form or start off with a super simple web forms from ServiceMonster dumped directly into your database. That gets you 85% there. And then call me when you have 150 in a month and they all need self-scheduling service. It's just so rare. Is it headed there? Yes, but it's been headed there for 15 years. Right? Not at no time is the flip going to switch and all of a sudden, the phone's going to stop ringing and everyone's going to book services online. I don't even do that. I have to talk to the person and have them come out and do, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go to some random website and then schedule Gavin to come clean my house if I've never met the man, right? I might do that now just because he uses ServiceMonster and he's local and he's cleaning my house. He's good. And I can go to his farm and go click. And then he'll be like, dude.
Right.
And it's cool and it's neat. But I'm like the 1 out of the 6 people who did that month. And those were all his customers. So keep it with a grain of salt. Although flipping to that, you could use the API to hook up with Alexa. No. I have a video of one of our clients who did it. So, Alexa, schedule a job with so-and-so, so-and-so. And then they stepped them through the process and that shit went right over to ServiceMonster.
What?
Yeah, it was so cool.
Wow.
Anyway, so you can do stuff like that.
Alexa's going to be scheduling jobs.
Yeah, that's right. Now, again, no one's going to use it for that, right? Nobody. Schedule a job, for next Wednesday with my carpet cleaner. Right. And then just have it happen. I mean, there's got to be some human interaction there.
I think everything you just said there is a perfect example of don't get so hung up on the details right away that money and time is being wasted. If there's something that works, get yourself some data that comes from that and then start to polish
That's
it.
right. Yeah, too many people want to start with the end. They want to start at the end. Now they're saying start with the end in mind, but you got to freaking start. You can't just whiteboard it to death and then be like, I need the situation to be perfect when I release it. No, fuck that. You got to get a form out there and start delivering people a form and then see how many people fill it out. Now, if you come back to me and it's like, Joe, I did that and there's like 400 people a month. I'm like, then hire a developer, man. Let's get some, you know what I mean? And then it makes sense. But before that, like, and I've been guilty of this. Like for years, Eric and I would solve problems that didn't exist, or we wouldn't throw right punches because we were afraid we would be flooded. The flood never comes, man. It never comes. I had 1 month in 16 years where I went, oh shit. Right. That was 2000. That was last February.
Last February.
Yeah. And that was an awakening, but it wasn't like, and it was 1 month. And everything went back to normal, you know. So I'll deal with that, you know. Fix it after the fact. It's about iterative improvement, and so just get it out in order to iterate. You can't think of everything. So, yeah. So
the one last thing that I wanted to bring up, because I actually talked to Eric about this earlier today, getting some info. I had been going through some old Ask ServiceMonster shows just over the last couple of weeks. And this is what got me kind of thinking about this, because you had mentioned order of importance as far as if you're the owner operator and new employees. 1, 2, 3, office manager, tech, sales staff, and then you could swap 1 and 2 depending on what role you wanted to play.
That's right.
And so when we decided to kind of go with this for the podcast today, I was like, you know, I kind of want to ask Eric something about ServiceMonster and kind of bringing that up, because I can already hear kind of the thought process for some people is like, well, yeah, it's easy to say that when you have, you know, employees already hired and you have a business process set up, but where do you really know? Like, is there some magical revenue number that you hit before you start hiring someone? And the answer to that is no, obviously.
Scary.
And that's what I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask about the first person that wasn't you and Eric and, you know, the backbone of this company, the first person you hired, and what that process was like.
You keep asking me these questions, and it's interesting. I think people are interested in the answer, but they don't always correlate, right?
Right. No, it's mostly just because from taking what they were doing out of it, but just from getting to the point where you had made enough revenue and you were getting enough volume to know that that's the point. That's really, I think.
Well, we hired before we had that point.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were bootstrapping and spoon feeding. We put $500,000 into the company over a 4-year period of time, spoon feeding it little bit by little bit. That's where the 5 owners come from. I provided the brain power and a handful of cash. Eric provided some brain power, some horsepower, and a handful of cash. Chris and Jason just provided a little bit of cash, and Dave provided a lot of brain power and his time. And so, and he worked for free for a little bit. So that was his cash contribution, right? And so even before we were profitable, we knew we had to get people in the door in order to build a growing, successful company, which is scarier, right? To be honest, but we knew the plan going in. And I had also been, how long was I? I had managed people for 7 years before I started ServiceMonster. So hiring people, firing people, looking for good people. It's a never-ending process to learn and grow and get better. But I had already been doing it for 7 years before we had started ServiceMonster. So I will say that the more common response to that question for a service provider is just terrified. When do you know when the right time is? Again, ServiceMonster is a software as a service. That means I don't have to make a single sale next month to make the exact same amount of money I made this month. That gives me ridiculous stability, meaning that I can hire somebody and I don't necessarily have to worry about making payroll. If I hired them comfortably in the month they were hired in, it should just be okay from that point forward. Service providers are different because you're going to hire somebody in the high season and you're going to be freaking out how you're going to pay their bills come Thanksgiving. So it's scary hiring people and worrying about someone else's well-being and what they can do for your company. And too many people go into it too quick without really the thought to, oh shit, I'm going to be in a deficit for December, January, and February. I'm actually going to be losing money if I keep all my people. But if you're building good people, that just should be part of the game. And as your business grows, that deficit will be a part of your normal flow. I mean, let's face it, HydroMaster, when Steve was running it, they were losing $150,000 a month for December, January, and February every single year. They knew it going in. That was just part of the problem. Retail outlets, those guys don't make any money until Black Friday. That's the first day of their profitability. The whole rest of the year is just keeping the lights on.
Yep.
So everything's seasonal, and this is part of being a business owner. And another reason why part of the SaaS model is so brilliant, because it's ridiculously stable. We're the only business type that gets special loans. Not that I take money out because I'm against loans, but if you're a SaaS company, yes, sir, this way, sir, because they know our accounts receivable is ridiculously stable. So yeah, that's my answer. It's scary, and you've got to go into it. If you want to succeed, you got to go into it eyes wide open, and you got to know what to expect. And, but it's all an iterative learning process. You've got to do it, or you're not going to get to that next level.
Yep. Beautiful answer. It's perfect.
Cool. That's all we got for today.
That's all we got.
Awesome. Once again, thank you so much for joining us on the ServiceMonster podcast. Come check us out on all of your podcast listening stations, as well as YouTube. Join us on Facebook, Instagram, leave some messages, hit some likes, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Take care.